I don't usually ask this early, but if you could like the video and subscribe, it would mean a lot. We're so close to reaching 1,000 subscribers, and your support could really help spread my content, Mark said with a sincere smile as he walked through the tree-lined streets of Paris. His thoughts drifted back to the life he had built alongside his wife Camille. After 35 years of marriage, they were preparing for a grand celebration of their love. Their grown children, Claire and Matt, now living abroad, were coming home for the occasion. The idea of family brought Mark a sense of pride and nostalgia. Life hadn't always been easy, but they had made it through together. At 60, Mark was still tall and imposing with salt and pepper hair and sharp blue eyes. He had spent his career as a lawyer, building a respected reputation and earning both wealth and admiration. His name carried weight in Paris's legal circles, and it always provided well for his family. Camille, 58, had been a school teacher for most of her life before retiring a few years ago. She had always been his anchor, warm, nurturing, and the perfect balance to his often distant, driven personality. Their home, nestled in the heart of Paris, was a charming apartment overlooking the Seine. It was filled with memories, photographs from vacations along the French Riviera, snapshots from family gatherings, and mementos from a life they had carefully built together. The upcoming celebration was supposed to be another beautiful addition to their collection of memories, or so Mark believed. As their anniversary approached, Mark decided to surprise Camille. He wanted to relive the early days of their love, so he ventured into the attic to search for the old photo albums and keepsakes from their past. Camille was out running errands, and he saw it as the perfect time to reminisce. The attic was cluttered with boxes, most filled with childhood items from their kids, but one box caught his attention. Tucked away in a corner, a small wooden chest sat quietly. He didn't remember ever seeing it before. Curious, he opened it. Inside, he found letters, their edges yellow with age and neatly tied with ribbon. The handwriting was unmistakable, yet it wasn't his. The letters were addressed to Camille. Mark's heart began to race. He slowly began to read. As he went through them, a secret he was never meant to uncover was laid bare. The letters were from Lauren, a man who had been a close family friend for years. Mark remembered Lauren well. Tall, charming, and a banker with a way with words. He had often joined them for dinners and gatherings, always polite and respectful. But now, reading these letters, Mark realized there had been something more. The letters spanned several years, starting from a time when Mark had been consumed by work, spending long hours at the office, traveling for business, and leaving Camille often alone at home. Lauren's words were full of passion, longing, and intimacy. He spoke of secret meetings, stolen kisses, and moments Mark had never imagined. It was clear that they had been having an affair. Each loving word exchanged between Camille and Lauren felt like a sharp stab to Mark's heart. The letters detailed the guilt they both felt, their fear of being caught, and the thrill of their hidden romance. His mind was overwhelmed with confusion. How could Camille, the woman he'd shared his life with, betray him like this? His hands trembled as he let the letters fall back into the chest. For a moment, he stood in the dim light of the attic, the weight of 35 years of trust and love crumbling around him. Everything he thought he knew about his marriage now seemed like a lie. Mark wanted to confront Camille, to demand the truth, but he didn't even know where to start. He stumbled down the stairs, his thoughts racing. How had he not seen it? Was he really so blind to what had been happening in his own home? That evening, Camille returned, her arms full of groceries for the party. She smiled as she walked through the door and kissed Mark on the cheek, as she always did, unaware of the storm brewing inside him. He couldn't bring himself to meet her eyes. Every touch felt like a betrayal. He excused himself, claiming he needed some time alone. Mark was overwhelmed by a sense of unease, needing time to process everything he had learned. He wasn't sure what steps to take next. Over the following days, he retreated into silence. He couldn't bring himself to confront Camille just yet, nor could he open up to anyone else, not even their children. He felt trapped within his own emotions, struggling to come to terms with the harsh truth and the shift in his reality. His mind replayed moments from their past, instances when Camille had seemed distant, distracted. How many of those times had been linked to Lauren? Camille, completely unaware of Mark's inner turmoil, continued eagerly planning their anniversary celebration. She spoke excitedly about renewing their vows and how deeply she loved him after all these years. Mark listened quietly, his heart aching with each word she spoke. One night, unable to sleep, Mark found himself gazing out at the glittering city lights of Paris. He remembered their wedding day, the joy, the hope, the promises they had made. He had believed they would grow old together, but now that future felt uncertain. After days of torment, Mark knew he couldn't carry the weight of the lie any longer. He had to confront Camille. The night before their anniversary, Mark sat her down in the living room. His face was pale, his hands trembling as he brought out the box of letters. Camille looked confused at first, but as he opened the chest and took out the letters, her expression shifted. Her eyes widened in shock and shame. "Mark, please let me explain," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Explain what?" Mark's tone was cold, full of hurt. "Explain how you could betray me like this? How long, Camille? How long were you with him?" Tears filled Camille's eyes as she reached out for his hand, but he pulled away, unable to bear her touch. "It was years ago, Mark," she said softly. "When you were always working, never home. I felt so alone. I didn't know how to talk to you about it. Lauren, he was there for me. He made me feel seen. But it's over, Mark. It ended a long time ago. Over." Mark spat the word, bitter in his mouth. "You expect me to believe that? You expect me to forget that you lied to me for years?" Camille's tears flowed freely. "I never meant to hurt you. I was weak, and I made a terrible mistake. But I love you, Mark. I've always loved you. Please, you have to believe that." Mark stood up, pacing the room as anger and hurt swirled within him. "How can you say you love me after everything you've done? You shattered everything we built." They stood there in silence for a long time. Camille wept, and Mark stared at the woman he had once known, now feeling like a stranger. The pain was unbearable. "I need time," Mark whispered, his voice barely audible. "I can't do this right now." He left the room, leaving Camille sobbing on the couch. That night, he packed a bag and drove to their summer home in Provence. He needed solitude, distance from the city, distance from a life that now felt like a lie. The retreat in Provence, the air in Provence was fresh, and the landscape peaceful, yet Mark found no solace. He spent his days wandering through the fields and vineyards, trying to come to terms with what had happened. Every memory of his life with Camille now felt tainted by betrayal. At night, he lay awake, his mind swirling with questions. How could she have done this? Was it his fault? Had he been too absorbed in his career, too absent in their marriage? The more he reflected, the more he realized that their marriage hadn't been perfect. There had been times when they had drifted apart, when work had consumed him, and Camille had seemed lonely. But still, he had never imagined she would turn to someone else. A week passed, and Camille reached out every day, begging for forgiveness. She pleaded with him to return home, telling him she loved him and regretted everything. But Mark couldn't bring himself to respond. One evening, as he sat on the porch of their summer home, he made a decision. Mark realized he needed to talk to someone who could help him process his emotions and provide clarity. He reached out to a therapist in a nearby village and scheduled a session. His therapy sessions were challenging, but they were necessary. For the first time, Mark was able to express his feelings of betrayal, anger, and confusion openly. The therapist guided him to understand that although Camille's actions were wrong, the issues in their marriage had been building for years. Mark had been distant, consumed by his career, while Camille had felt increasingly neglected. This didn't justify her infidelity, but it helped Mark make sense of why that had happened. Over time, Mark began to heal. He realized that holding on to his anger would only continue to hurt him. He had a choice: try to rebuild his marriage or walk away and start fresh. After several weeks, Mark returned to Paris, uncertain about what the future held, but knowing he needed to face Camille in person. When Mark entered their apartment, Camille was waiting for him. She looked exhausted, her eyes red from crying. She stood as he entered but didn't approach him. They stood there, the weight of everything unspoken hanging in the air. "Mark," she began, her voice trembling. "I'm so sorry. I don't know how to make this right, but I need you to know that I love you. I've always loved you." Mark sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I believe you, Camille, but I don't know if love is enough anymore. You broke something inside me, inside us." Tears welled in Camille's eyes again, but she nodded. "I understand." They talked for hours that night, sharing their pain, their regrets, and their hopes for the future. In the end, Mark made the hardest decision of his life. He couldn't stay in the marriage. The betrayal had cut too deep, and he didn't believe they could ever truly heal. But instead of leaving in anger, he thanked Camille for the years they had shared, for the love they once had, and for their children. They parted on peaceful terms, both understanding that sometimes love, no matter how strong, isn't enough to overcome the damage that's been done. Mark moved into a smaller apartment in the city, focusing on rebuilding his life. He continued therapy, working through the pain of the past, and slowly he began to find peace. He realized that while Camille had betrayed him, he could still find happiness in the years ahead. As for Camille, she stayed in their home, carrying away her actions but also finding a way to move forward. They remained in contact for the sake of their children, and over time, their relationship transformed into one of mutual respect, though not love. Thank you for watching Shattered Vows, a story of betrayal and redemption. This story serves as a reminder that trust is the foundation of any relationship. Once it's broken, it's incredibly difficult to rebuild. But in the end, the journey is about finding the strength to move forward, no matter how painful it may be. If you enjoyed the story or have thoughts, questions, or personal experiences you'd like to share, we'd love to hear from you in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories like this.